Hey everybody, how's it going? I am just going to do a quick check, make sure everything's on since Zane is working on the mastermind that he mentioned last week, which is later today. He is doing his little webinar. If you want to jump on there and check that out, it's at 4 p.m. Eastern in a couple of hours. But he's going to give me the thumbs up and make sure everything's looking good. And then we're going to get started. Thanks for being here. You guys that I can see are already here live. As soon as I get the okay from Zane, I'm going to fire off. Hopefully it's telling me that you can hear me. I just don't know if you can or not. Seems like it. I'm going to start going through the usual spiel. Hopefully you guys are... Oh, Zane says we're good. Super. So, hey everybody, it's Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. That means, as per usual, it is time for another episode of the Copy Show, which, as I just mentioned, live episodes are recorded Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. But if you are joining us at a time that's not Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, obviously you're watching a recording. This is episode 14. We have 14 more episodes in the channel. If you like what we're going to talk about today, I encourage you to go check those out. Subscribe if you dig it. What it is that we are going to talk about in general on this show, as always, is persuasion, influence, mind control, marketing, that kind of stuff, ways to trick people, primarily ways to trick people into giving you money. Spooky, right? The show is called the Cult of Copy Show because the Cult of Copy is a discussion group started around that particular topic. We began on Skype and then spread to Facebook. We have over 9,000 members. You're welcome to join if you go to the URL, which you can see below my name here. If you are watching the video version of this show, cultofcopy.com currently should take you to the Facebook group page where you can ask to join. And the not-so-distant future, that URL will point to our webpage. From there, you'll be able to get to this show and the podcast and the group itself. As usual, I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sir Colin D. Terrio, Pontifex Maximus and founder of the Cult of Copy, retired marketing copywriter, and now I just sort of run the group and make this lovely show for all you lovely people. This week, specifically, if you saw the announcement about what the episode is going to be about, we are going to be talking about the idea of laziness being a virtue. And it's a little maybe counterintuitive. Most entrepreneurial business type people I know, other people who are self-employed like myself, tend to really talk about how the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people is like you gotta take action, you gotta be a real go-getter, hard work, blah blah blah. And that's cool. I'm not saying that you can't do it that way. I'm just saying laziness can be a big help. And I feel like the parts of my business where I struggled were because I built the kind of business that required me to behave in a mode that isn't comfortable for me. Meaning, I built the kind of business I saw that my friends and colleagues had, and they happen to be amped up alpha personalities that are like hyper engaged, hyper energetic, very, I guess you would say, kind of that overachiever mindset, and that's not me. And for a long time, I struggled to overcome what I thought was a personal shortcoming. In that, I wouldn't say I'm like lazy. I mean, I am lazy, but really, when it comes to work, my more natural mode is I get into the zone and I can do a lot of work in a short amount of time. But really, the reason I work is to earn free time to do whatever I want, whether that's playing video games or reading comic books or playing with my kids or doing nothing at all. That's why I work. Like, I don't work because I enjoy it. I work to support me doing what I actually like doing in my free time, which unfortunately usually doesn't pay as well as playing old video games on the PS2. Sad to say, but such is the case. So I think what really turned things around for me was when I learned to look at my laziness as a virtue, something to preserve and harness, and structure my business and income and routines around maximizing my slack and free time and focusing my efforts on things that were actually going to be productive and move me forward and set realistic bars for me to hit, realistic goals that would fit the way that I like to work rather than building a business around the way someone else works. And that's something I wish I remembered where I read it, but it was, I want to say someone did a podcast where they interviewed a business expert, and the business expert ended up chewing the podcaster out for not having a real business plan. And the main takeaway from it was that if you want a certain business and lifestyle, and you look for a mentor, you look for people to follow, you look for people to model, you need to be aware that the business and the lifestyle are tightly intertwined. So if you see someone who has a very successful business and you like that business, and then you look at their life and they work nonstop, they don't seem to have a lot of free time, their work seems to be the thing that they spend the most time on and all they care about, and that's not what you want, you can't have that business, because that's the price they pay to have that business. It's better for you to pick someone who has the lifestyle that you want and then figure out how it is that they're supporting that lifestyle. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about in detail today. As I mentioned at the very beginning of the show, Zane is working on his own thing today, so he's not joining us as director. I'm flying solo, which means for you, if you want to leave a comment and a question, it's not going to do that cool thing where it shows up on the screen and we get to read it. But I'm going to look on the YouTube channel where this video is playing, live streaming, blah, blah. I'm going to look there at the end of the show, and I'm going to look for comments and questions there. And maybe in the middle. I'll take a look in the middle, too. But I am only one pair of eyeballs, so if you do have a question or a comment, please put it on the YouTube video page, and I will get to it at the end of the show. As we have been doing the last few weeks, I wanted to talk about a neat marketing thing that I observed out in the real world before we get into the actual content that we're going to talk about today, laziness. Most nerdy internet people I know are probably already Weird Al Yankovic fans, and he's got a new album coming out, and the way he's marketing it is actually really neat because first of all, he's never been your typical recording artist, right? His work has always been based on making fun of whatever's cool at the time, which is sort of brilliant because he always can be relevant because he's piggybacking off of what other people decide is cool, right? He can't ever make a wrong choice because he's always commenting on what everyone else already likes. Now, the way he's launching this new album is he did 8 videos, and he's doing a new video each day for 8 days, and he's sort of launching it exclusively on different hip internet culture type websites where he probably has a huge fan base, being that the internet's run by nerds, basically. I say that in a good way. I'm a nerd. So the first one was like on the Nerdist, and then he did one on College Humor. I can't remember where the third one was. I haven't seen the fourth one yet today, but I'm sure it's out. I thought that was a really interesting way to gather up momentum behind releasing the album. And I saw in an interview with him, he did an interview on NPR where he said he thought maybe this might be his last traditional album where he does a whole suite of songs, and the idea is you're going to launch them all at once as part of an album. He said the internet sort of disengaged that idea of an album where it's much quicker, especially in the medium he works where you're parroting a pop song while it's hot. it's faster for him to put them out one song at a time, because he says if you wait until you have a whole album, it's not like the MTV days when he first got started, where those things are in heavy rotation perpetually. You know, he said by the time he puts a whole album together, some of the songs he's making fun of might not even be cool anymore to the people that he would put it out there. But of the songs that he's released so far, if you haven't seen Word Crimes, which is to the tune of Blurred Lines by Robin Thicke, it's a special place in my heart, being a writer and an internet grammar Nazi, enforcing those sorts of things on other people whenever I can. So that was a good one. You should check that out. I also think that there's a lot to be learned from basically this distributed launch idea, where he's putting out different pieces of content in different areas with the presumption that the fan base are kind of following him from site to site and growing up until the album's release date. That's a really neat idea to me, whereas before he would have different videos for different singles and they'd come out after the album was out and sort of build into the long tail of those album sales over time. It's basically all pre-launch, because the album doesn't come out until all 8 of his videos are out, and hopefully people will have heard the songs and go out to iTunes or the music store or whatever and buy the album. I thought that was a really cool model, and leave it to Weird Al to be an innovator in music marketing. What can you say? He's an interesting dude. If you do get a chance, check out that interview with him on NPR where he talks about the whole business side of it and putting that together as a release and how he thinks the music industry has changed. I thought it was cool. Maybe you'll like it too if you're a marketing nerd like me. That said, hopefully you're ready. We're going to jump into this week's topic, which I have said already is on the virtue of laziness. So, like we've said, the deal with laziness, most business people look at it as like a sin or a negative attribute, something you should squash, something you should avoid. I have found that harnessing it and making it work to my advantage has worked a lot better. And really the way that I've sort of integrated that is, like I said, I used to be a freelance copywriter, right? So I do client work. In order to thrive at that, you have to take in more and more clients, right? Because you get paid per job, unless you're like a bigwig and you work for long-term projects where you get royalties and you get paid forever off of something as long as they keep using your copy. Some guys do that. That's not the way I did it. I tended to work for launches, which meant after the launch was done, it didn't make a difference if I had royalties or not, because they weren't selling that item anymore. So when I went freelance and I started to break away from doing client work and doing training and making information products that teach interesting marketing things to people, even when I was still doing service, I started following this philosophy of, you can either, if you want to grow your business as a lazy person, you should never take on more work for more money, because that eats into your time. That's the opposite of laziness, right? Who wants more work? So what you should do is either figure out how to get paid the same amount but do less work, or do the same amount of work but get paid more to do it. So if you want to get paid the same amount and do less work, most of the time people talk about raising your prices, but if you're uncomfortable doing that, what you can do is reduce what you're putting on the table for that price tag. So I used to do copywriting packages that cost a certain amount of money, and what I started doing was chopping away all the extra things that I would throw in, but just leave the price the same. So eventually I had a 5-figure price tag on just the sales letter by itself. No extra emails, no pre-launch video scripts. It wasn't part of a package deal. My baseline was just for the one piece of copy, the main piece, the sales letter. And eventually what I had been charging for entire packages of copy was now my fee for just the letter by itself. And if people wanted more things thrown in, then the price would go up. So that worked very, very well for me, because it meant again, I was making the same amount of money for less work. And it turned out the market that I was serving, based on the reputation and the results that I was giving, were happy to do that. I just had no idea as a provider. I thought I had to throw in the kitchen sink and put in all these extra deals just to get the work. But it turns out that I didn't, right? So I was able to reduce my workload and then make the same amount per letter. Looking at the other side of that coin, which is to, what do we say, do the same amount of work but make more money at it. Typically, most people think that that's difficult to do, to raise your price, because they feel like the clients they already have won't like it and will be mad. So if you do recurring service for people, that is something to be concerned about. But most of the time, if you raise your prices as a regular thing where the customer expects it and they know it's going to happen, you will lose customers. But what that does is it makes room for new customers who will come in at the price you're already charging, because you've raised your value profile because your price is higher. The more you charge, the higher profile of a customer you can bring in, because that's what they expect to pay for what it is that you deliver. So in the case of copywriting, for example, very low-end product creators that make $7 products are not going to pay $10,000 and up for a sales letter, because it's not cost effective. They would have to sell so many of them in order to pay their copywriter, right? So they hire lower cost copywriters, and many people who work at that level as a sales copywriter have trouble raising their prices because they feel like their client base isn't going to pay more. But the trick is, as you raise your prices for copy, the guy who has a $2,000 product that he wants to sell, you know, some deluxe awesome training course or maybe some elite high level event ticket that costs that much, he doesn't want to hire a very, very cheap copywriter. He wants to hire an expert who is charging appropriately for what it is that he wants to offer. So raising your price tag is something that you should be doing on a regular basis. Now, if raising your prices makes you nervous because you're scared to be like the most expensive one, you feel like that's going to put too much pressure on you, that's a legitimate concern. So for people in that box, what I typically recommend is find out what your most expensive competitor is and then charge less than them but more than everybody else. So that way you're number two, you're the second most expensive, and if people are happy to pay what the most expensive guy charges and get what he gets, and you can deliver the same thing for slightly less, you have nothing to worry about, because anytime someone's upset, you can say, well, this guy charges more and he gives the exact same thing, you got to deal with me. So that gives you a psychological safety net, if you will, if you're nervous being the ultimate most expensive option in your field. Just be number two. Be happy being number two, because you're still making more than everyone else, doing less work than them, and the only guy who is really on the hook for the best results because he's charging the most is the guy in front of you. Amazingly, when people get mad at that guy, they'll typically come straight to you if it's the kind of field where all the competitors are kind of well known, right? Because if the guy who's the most expensive gave them something inferior, but they were going with the most expensive guy because they think that's what the work should cost, they're not going to all of a sudden lowball it. They're going to go to people who are in a similar strata, and here you are to be their hero, right? So following those two principles, again, either figuring out how you can get paid the same amount but do less work, or do the same amount of work and get paid more. Look at everything in your business where you make money and figure out if you can do that. If you have a very complex offer that costs a certain amount, cut some stuff out of it. Make it easier to do. Charge the same amount. If you have a standard service that you charge a certain amount for, raise your prices by 15%. Just to see what happens. Next time you quote it out, just quote it way higher than you normally would, just to see what happens. If they say no, you can always negotiate down to the price you were originally going to ask anyway, maybe by cutting out some of the things that you were putting on the table. It's a neat thing, especially when you do a service where the amount that you charge is very flexible, right? Like when you do copywriting, the amount that you can charge is based on the value that you provide. That being said, client selection is very important. So if you want to charge a lot for a little bit of work, you need to find the people for whom that little bit of work is worth a lot, worth way more than what you charge. An example I normally use is a lot of people who are in my circles do what's known as offline marketing, which is you take offline businesses, brick and mortar businesses that are local to you, and you help them with their online marketing because you're an online marketing expert. Lots of people in the internet marketing, make money online field would think that basic email marketing is dumb. It's below them. They wouldn't spend $7 on yet another book about how to build a list and market to them, right? Heard it a million times, worthless to them. But I guarantee if you live in a big enough city, you can find many, many multi-million-dollar businesses that are collecting email addresses but not doing anything with them because they're busy. They're doing something else. They're not ever going to buy a $7 ebook to say, here's how to build your email list up and market to it, but they will pay a consultant 5 figures to do the exact same thing it says in that $7 ebook and do it for them, help them set it up. Because if they're a multi-million-dollar business and they have this email list of customers who spend all these thousands of dollars, you can start making them 5 or 6 figures a week or a month at least instantly just by just by contacting the people they already have. They're going to be happy to give you a huge amount, a portion of those profits, because it's money that was just sitting there that they didn't have before. But did you have to be like a huge expert to leverage that? No, you just applied something that they weren't doing and you did a good job of it, and it wasn't hard. So you pick the right customers. This whole like charge more for less work and then do less work for the same amount of money will really start working a lot better for you if you give more care to deliberately selecting and targeting the customers that will make this happen versus just saying yes to every customer that comes to you. Let's see. Next point. I didn't take as good a notes as I normally do for these shows because it's a show about laziness, and I felt like it would be very counterintuitive if I did very detailed notes. So another point I wanted to talk about is by setting the bar lower for your output, you can get more done. So I had this real problem with when I first started to try and make, training offerings and products. I looked at the way other people in my field had done it before. It was very intimidating because it's very top-heavy. It's very front-loaded effort. So if you're going to make a video course, you had to make all the slides, and you had to record the videos, and you had to get them uploaded and build your membership site and blah, 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 and do all of that stuff. I was failing at that miserably because I am not that kind of person who can execute that way. I am very much like the less time there is between having the idea and actually doing something with it, the better, because the longer it goes, the less likely I am to actually do anything at all with the idea. And the reason that gap kept getting wider and wider is because I knew all of the work between idea and execution, and I wasn't getting patted on the back. I wasn't getting my fix of feedback from how clever the idea was fast enough for me to want to do all that work. And then every new idea I had, it was that much more work. It just kept piling on. So what I did, and any of you who have taken my FIDIL training, which stands for Fuck It, Do It Live, which is my personal product creation method, or if you've seen any of the trainings that I've sold inside the Cult of Copy, you've seen the way that I do it. And the way I came up with that process was I wrote down what the minimum functional requirements were to actually make the thing happen. So if I wanted to sell a training, I needed a checkout button. I needed a way to deliver it, so I needed to collect their email address. And then I needed to make the content. But I didn't want to make it in advance, so what if I sold it as a live attendance webinar? So I was getting the feedback, which is to say people buying it, before I even made it, which made me even more excited about the idea. So then I would put together a really good presentation and then deliver it live. But I also applied the principle of keeping it minimal and functional to the product itself. So when I sold it, I made it real clear that this isn't overproduced, this isn't created for the mass market. This is just going to be me and you live talking about this as colleagues, and it's going to be very raw. It's going to be unpretty mind maps, and we're just going to go through it the same way I would do it if I was doing the work myself. Like, I'm not going to decorate my own work materials. I just need them to be there. You know, if I'm writing a sales letter and I have my mind map template, I don't need it to be pretty so it doesn't look pretty. Whereas the temptation before, looking at my colleagues and competitors' products, I needed to get that branded and make it into a nice pretty PDF, and I had to have all these pretty notes and blah, blah. I didn't do any of that. I just said, here's what I have. I'm going to teach it to you. We're going to meet live. We're going to cover this, 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 and this. That's it. If you want to come, here's how you pay. Sign up, register for the webinar. I'll see you there. You'll get the recording at the end. Minimal. And it worked fantastic. It worked better than anything else I had tried to sell by building up and polishing. It just worked with what I was doing because it took advantage of the way that my brain works, right? So when I was most excited because I just had the idea, I could post the idea to my group, get people to buy into it while the energy's high, while I'm really into the idea, while I'm still spitting out ideas, and very quickly turn around the next week and teach it, record it, and now I have this product. This was a neat twist that I didn't think of in advance, but has also worked to my advantage, is that now I have this product that, because of the way I created it, can actually be seen to have more value than if I had sat down and recorded a course from beginning to end and pre-packaged it to sell. Because now I can say, this was an exclusive live training event that only a few people got to go to, but I recorded it, and now you can get the recording and be one of the people who got the benefit of this training if you missed it before. That's way better than trying to sell it cold as raw information. So that method worked really, really well for me. And if you have a process that's eating up tons of time and has a million moving parts, try and pare it down and try and sell it to your existing audience and see, because you never know what decorations and fluff they're willing to do without until you chop it down and give it to them in a minimal format and see if they like it. I could always take my presentations later, strip out the audio, have a designer make fancy slides, have someone do video animations, have someone package it up and make a cover and a logo, put up a website and a sales page and all that. I could do all that later, but I don't have to because I already got paid to do it up front, right? I got paid to create the product by creating this minimal process. That's not to say you have to do these live trainings, but look at your processes and figure out what you could cut out. What's the minimal functional way that you could put that offer together so that people can give you money and you can give them the product? And then you can look at production. What's the minimal effort you can put into actually producing the product that you promised to deliver? And like I said, polish it up. That could be phase 2, you know, polish it up later. In fact, talking about phase 2, now we come to the portion of the show where if you would like to be an advertiser, this is where your ad would be. But we're going to talk about a house ad since I haven't taken outside advertisers. At the beginning of the year, I did like a mastermind ongoing training on people who had seen what the cult of copy was like and wanted to create that kind of group for their own topic, whatever that might be. You know, whatever their business is, they wanted to create a tight-knit fan discussion group to do the kind of things that I was doing with the cult of copy. I created that group. The first, I guess you would call it like the first draft, the first iteration, I taught everything at a very meta kind of high level, 30,000 foot view. Here's how and why everything is the way that it is. Well, some people took that and ran with it and were very, very successful with it. But some people got bogged down in the details, and it was the kind of thing where at the time I was teaching it, I couldn't break it down to the level where they were struggling because I hadn't looked at it at that level exactly. So what I've done recently is take those older high-level trainings, and now I'm going to reteach it and break it down into much more granular, much more detailed level, right? So what that is basically I taught the material, and I'm taking my own training And now I'm polishing it. I'm taking it, I'm refining it, I'm making it more detailed based on the demands of the audience. Whereas if I tried to make it perfect the right time, the first time, I still wouldn't have it for sale. That content still doesn't exist, but I'm creating it on demand for the audience based on the feedback that I got from the first draft. So I'm a living example of doing this, where I put it out a certain way the first time, and now I'm taking that, re-exploring it, re-examining it, re-releasing it, and it's a brand new product that people are going to pay me for on an ongoing basis. But if I hadn't done it the first way, there wouldn't be any content to refine. And that's something, it's a lesson you sort of have from art school. A lot of people that don't know how art is made, you don't know how paintings are made, think the artist just sits there on a blank canvas and starts painting this masterpiece. Like every brush stroke you see in the finished painting was put just so onto the canvas, when really there's underpainting. Like you do a sketch and then you paint in using like really washed out oil colors. You block in the heavy shadows and the light so you get the gist of where everything is, and things come in layers. That's really what you can do when you follow this method, and don't let perfectionism and overachievement get in the way. You just sort of layer things on top. So anyway, I sort of segued into more content when I was supposed to be doing a pitch. If you think you like the Cult of Copy, you're a fan of the group, and you want to figure out how to do that kind of thing in your own business, get in touch with me. Look in the Cult of Copy. I just put a post up about how you can join it. I would give you a link where you can buy it, but there's, again, I follow my own advice. There's no sales page, so I would suggest get into the Cult of Copy, read the post where it goes into detail about what's included, what's involved, and then if you want to join up, you can join up. It's cool if you don't want to. It won't hurt my feelings. I know it's not for not everybody who's into the stuff we talk about on the show necessarily wants a group like the Cult of Copy. That's cool. That's not really what we talk about. It's just one of those things where, like, hey, if you like what's going on in here, I can show you what I did to get that. So if you're interested in that, check it out. But that is a living example of how I literally drink my own Kool-Aid as a cult leader. I really did make, like, I got paid to create 1.0, and the people who paid for that told me what it was missing in order to make the 2.0 version, and now I'm going to do that and profit from it again 2 times off this. It's really the same material. I'm just breaking it down into more detail based on that feedback, which, again, I wouldn't have if I didn't do it that way. Let's see. Okay, so another thing that's really important if you want to harness laziness and pursuit of slack and make it actually profitable for you is, the thing that tires me out the most is trying to meet expectations that I've set. And when I don't do that, it's the thing that bums me out the most. It's the thing that keeps me up at night. It's the thing where I feel real bad if I promise something a certain way and then I don't deliver. But the trick to getting over that is not to beat yourself up over not delivering. It's to get more and more realistic about what it is that you're willing to promise. Because then if you don't overpromise, it's really easy to over-deliver, right? Like if you under-promise, then over-delivering is really easy, right? So not to spoil it for anybody, but anyone who comes in on that deal that I just mentioned with the how to be your own cult leader sort of training, right? There's an unannounced bonus that's part of that. I didn't even mention it in the offer when I posted it to the cult, but there's this whole extra thing in there. So I'm over-delivering, I'm giving people more than what they asked for, but it's not because I put myself on the line to deliver something that I'm not prepared to deliver. I just under-promised, and then I'm giving more than what I told people that they would get. So examine your offers with that in mind, where you're looking at the promises that you feel like you have to make to get the deal, to get the sale, to get that client to say yes. Do you really need to take it that far? Are you trying to talk them out of a no, or are they just going to let you keep putting more and more crap on the table for free just to see how much you'll give? right? Always figure out what it is that you're willing to put on there that you can hit that mark, and keep it low. I would recommend keeping it less than what you actually intend to give in the first place. And that makes it really easy to over deliver, and they're always pleasantly surprised because they're getting something that they didn't expect. The only time people are disappointed really is when you fail to meet expectations. The thing to keep in mind is you're the one that's in charge of setting those expectations. So if you don't set expectations that you're not going to keep, then you come out ahead, right? You are able to deliver what it is that you promise because it's less than you intended to, and it's easy to go above and beyond, and they really do feel like you did them a solid. They get much more benefit than what you promised. They feel great. They feel like they got extra out of you. They feel like you're looking out for them and doing so much more, and you are, but it's a perception trick because you just didn't tell them everything you were already going to do for them. Sneaky. It's very sneaky. That works in all aspects of life too. Under promising so that over delivering is easy. Let's see. The other point I wanted to make with that, with not killing yourself with unrealistic expectations, is that this idea of perfection is a vice. And I know a lot of entrepreneurial types, they don't really struggle with perfection. They like to take imperfect action, rapid action, massive action. They don't really struggle with perfection per se. But I know a lot of people, it's not really perfection, but it's like this grandness of vision, right? This idea, this big picture idea of something that they're going to do. And because they are maybe not setting this idea of what the minimum functionality is, so they can take care of that first and then do everything else that they manage to find the time for before launch. If they don't structure it that way, the project balloons in their mind and gets away from them and ends up not being satisfactory to them or to anyone, but especially not to them because it doesn't meet this huge vision that they had in their head for this wonderful, magnificent thing that they wanted to make that was going to be the best ever. I feel like that's a trap, and it's a trap I fell into coming from like the art world. I like ideas. I like having big ideas, and I used to fall victim to those a lot because I'd have these huge, grandiose ideas of things that I was going to do, and I would trick myself into thinking that it wasn't that much work. Like one time I had an idea. I was going to do a t-shirt site years ago, 2007, and I was going to make one design a day. That was it. Sounds easy. I do one drawing a day. That's simple. I do more than that anyway for fun sometimes, right? Little doodles. Just put them on a t-shirt. No big deal. Well, at the time, I found out that it took like 15 minutes to draw and then like 3 hours every day to turn that into a suitable design that I could upload to the t-shirt manufacturing websites. So I spent all of this time developing the site and hooking it up to social media, doing all these cool things so it was going to be easy and simple, and I was going to put it all together, and then like I made like 30 of them before I was like, this is killing me to work like a full 8-hour day and then come home and spend 3 hours uploading one t-shirt design, which left no time to promote any of the designs I had already made. That is an example of how these grand ideas that I had, even though I'm a lazy person, were killing me, because I thought I could do one design a day. Now I know not to pin myself into a corner like that, so you'll notice a lot of times if you interact with me on a work basis, I try to be non-committal because I want to make sure that I can deliver and satisfy and keep people happy in a way that I wouldn't be able to do if I would overpromise. So keep that in mind. Keep your ideas in check. Even if you have a grand idea, design it in layers like we talked about. Figure out what the minimum functional operational model is to do what you want to do and set all that up first, right? Like the bare minimum, then come in and start padding it out and filling it in and making it nice. And then that way if you miss the deadline or you get close and you have to start cutting things out, it will at least work, right? People can still at least buy it and you can still at least deliver something if you alter the sales message. Whereas if you didn't set any of that up until you had it all planned out as a huge project, then the whole project isn't finished if you don't finish. But if you do it iteration style, where you do the minimum functionality first and then layer everything on top of that, you can still go when it's time to go, even if you're not fully ready. Let's see. Or if you're like me, you just run out of energy once you've done the minimum functionality, and oh well, that's good enough. People can still buy it. Yay! The next thing we're going to talk about is how you can transform the slack time, this free time that you're giving yourself, into your best ideas ever. Now, when I was doing client work originally, like I said, you get to this mode where the only way you can make more money is to take on more work. And doing more work takes on more time. And you don't have any time to do anything else, like think about how to grow your business, think about where you're going to branch out, think about other things you're going to do. Because in order to make more money, you're filling in every possible second that you want to spend doing work. When I started doing that thing where I would raise my prices for the same amount of work, or do less work for the same amount of money, I started having all of this additional free time. So a lot of my peers in the same sort of strata of copywriting as me had tons and tons of work on the clock, and I will tell you flat out, they were making much more money than me at the time. But instead of doing multiple 4-figure projects per month, I might do one big 5-figure project every 3 months. And it would really take like maybe 1 month worth of work spread out over those 3 months to develop that project and deliver it and make the client happy and give them the result that they wanted. So all the rest of that time, I wasn't working on stuff. It didn't require me to think on 50 different projects. I had one project that I was thinking about for my client and working on. Then all the rest of the time was just open. I didn't have so many different people's ideas in my head. I didn't have so many projects that I was worrying about. If something came up, I could just be like, oh, well, I'm going to, fuck off and go to the movies today instead of doing what I need. I didn't have this massively tight schedule to have to rearrange. And what that allowed me to do is come up with all these ideas, like for the Cult of Copy and for the trainings I did and for developing all these different little ideas of cool things I wanted to do on the side, because I had room to think. Like, I didn't sell all of my brain space to someone else, and that slack time turned into like really the best ideas that I've had. I'm at the point now where I feel like I have so many plates spinning that I've actually lost some of that slack time. But really, I'm doing like fun stuff. I mean, like this show. I have to do it every week, so it does take up my time, and it takes up things for me to think about. I love it, and it's fun. But now, like, that time is forever dedicated to thinking of the show instead of me having a hole in every week where I can think about whatever I want. So I'm working on restructuring some things in the background to get it to where I have Slack days. And Slack days are great. I recommend to everyone, take a day when everyone else in the world is working. I used to do Fridays where I just didn't do anything. Like, I didn't even bring my kid to daycare. He just stayed home with me and we watched cartoons and play with toys. Take a day every week where you literally plan nothing. You have no phone calls. You're not getting online to pay bills. You're not working on anything. And what you should do is be really hard at first. Carry a little notebook around with you. When you have an idea for something work-related that you feel like you need to deal with, just write it down and deal with it the next day. So you won't forget it, but it really doesn't have to be dealt with right this very second. And you'll find when you give yourself that space, you're going to start having very creative, awesome ideas for your own things. And those usually end up being the most profitable, most enjoyable things that you work on. And you have to have a quiet mind to do it. So that is yet another way where maximizing the amount of slack time, of free time that you give yourself really can benefit your business in a way that nothing can, right? Because you're going to have the best ideas for your business more so than any other employee, because you just have a better idea of what your company is capable of, what your vision is, right? But if you don't give yourself time to work on that, No one else is going to do it for you. And it's just going to stagnate. Like, you're not ever going to progress. You're not ever going to advance. This free time is when you start figuring that stuff out, like how to charge more and do less, how to do the same amount and make the more money from it. All of these little things we talked about, those are the kind of thoughts that are going to start popping into your head when you give yourself this free time, creating these new, original, interesting projects that, if you don't give yourself room to think about them, you won't have them. That's one way your laziness can serve you and serve you well. Let's see. I've heard it said before that if you want to find the most efficient way to do something, force a lazy person to do it. And they're going to figure out every little efficiency that can be milked from that process because they just don't want to deal with it. They want to maximize their free time and they don't want to give it a lot of attention. So they're going to figure out how to do that project in as little time and effort as possible to meet the minimum standard set for accomplishing that task. When I read that, it took me back to the days when I was an employee, because I was literally that kind of person. Like I said, I like to maximize my free time. So if you gave me a project that the previous guy was taking 2 days to do, I would figure out how to do it in 1 day and then goof off for a day and still take 2 days to do it. But if you watch the lazy guy, you'll figure out how to do it faster. One little apocryphal story I've heard told about this, you may have heard a variant of this story, but I think it illustrates very well how putting the lazy guy on the task will figure it out. This company, I heard it was toothpaste. They were packaging toothpaste. And when the drugstores would get the box with all the little individually boxed tubes of toothpaste, sometimes they wouldn't be full, right? So you'd order like a pallet of 64 boxes of toothpaste or whatever, and you'd open the box and it would be like 61. 3 of them would be missing. The way their process worked, that drugstore would have to send back the whole box and then get a full box. They couldn't just send them 3 additional loose tubes. That's not how their shipping thing worked. And it wasn't a huge problem, but tallied up over time, it was causing them some great losses. So he hired an engineering company to come in, look at their process of packaging the toothpaste, and figure out what was happening. So they figured out there was this one spot on the line where the holdup was happening. So they developed and designed an additional machine that would be their fail-safe, basically. So when the box of toothpaste with the newly redesigned packaging doohickey or whatever would put all the alleged perfect amount of toothpaste in the box, in the crate, the full crate. It would roll down the assembly, it would roll onto a scale, and if the scale was wrong, like it didn't weigh enough, it didn't have enough individual boxes of toothpaste, and an alarm would go off and the line would stop, and the lineman would come down, manually inspect it, put in the missing amount of toothpaste, and then ship it. So that way they're now shipping 100% full boxes of toothpaste. So they're not getting the returns. They're not having to process any of that. Should help, right? So when they're looking at the numbers, they were expecting, I don't know, let's say for the sake of argument, that like 3% of all the boxes they shipped were not full. And they expected that 3% number to hold, that the scale should be catching it, right? They should be fixing 3% of all their orders if this device is working. Well, it started out doing that, and then they noticed like the alarm stopped going off. It started never needing to be turned on, and the boxes were all still shipping out full. The 3% of errors vanished, but not because of this thing they spent millions of dollars developing. What had happened, they went down to the line, and the lineman figured out that if the box wasn't full, it didn't weigh enough so he could put a fan on the line to blow the empty boxes off of the line, and then just refill the boxes by hand, because he got tired of getting up and restarting the line every time the alarm went off. So with a $2 fan, he solved the problem that this $1 million scale was supposed to solve, and he kept the line moving smoothly. because he was lazy and he got tired of getting up to go shut down the line and restart it manually. So you just put a fan that blew the empty boxes off the line. He didn't have to manually pack them. They just flew away. Why did that work? Because he was lazy. He got tired of walking across the stupid aisle to restart the machine. Instead, he solved his own problem in a very elegant, very direct way. And like a true lazy person, he did not tell anybody about this undiscovered efficiency. He kept it to himself so he would look awesome. Another guy I learned that from was Scotty, the engineer from Star Trek. I can't remember if he ever said it on the original show, but in that Next Generation episode where they beam him down because he's been like stuck in a transporter loop for centuries or whatever, if I remember right, he tells LaForge, the new engineer, that when the captain asks you to do something, you always, again, overestimate how much time it takes by a lot. And then when you deliver it in the real amount of time it takes, everyone thinks you're a miracle worker because you beat your own estimate as to how long it would take when really you were just lying the whole time. So I call that one pulling a Scotty, but that ties directly into what we talked about before. If you underpromise, it's very, very easy to overdeliver, and everyone's happy. Everyone's happy when you do it that way. It's not even lying. You're just terrible at estimating how long things take. No one's ever mad if it takes less time than you said. Everyone gets mad when it takes longer. This leads to problems in huge organizations with like time padding, because any project will swell to fill the amount of time allotted for it. So if you do this with employees, that's why you need to watch them. It's because like your lazy ones will figure out these awesome efficiencies, then never report them because they want the free time. You need to monitor them and make sure the amount of time it takes to do the work is the actual amount of time it takes to do the work. But if it's you, if you're self-employed, who cares, right? Let's see. Undreamed of efficiencies by procrastinating. Procrastinating is a good one because you'll find all kinds of shortcuts you can take when you waste all the allotted time you've given yourself and you only have a little bit of time left over to do what it is that you needed to do. Someone has posted a graph before online, I think it was from that comic, Toothpaste for Dinner, and it was like the creative process, and it's like 90% of it is goofing off, and then a little bit of it is like freaking out, and then a very small amount of it at the very end is doing all the work while crying, and then the deadline. That crying phase, you're going to find all kind of shortcuts, and you're going to figure out what was actually important to do in the project. But other ways you can find efficiencies using your lazy brain is compounding. How can you layer things to get more benefit out of each little bit of work that you do? An example of this, which I promise I say it every week, and I'm working on it, and it will pay off. I just haven't done it yet. When I wanted to do the show, what I really wanted was a podcast. But by talking to Zane, our director, who again is off today, doing his own thing, which we wish him luck with that. Good luck, Zane, on your webinar that you're doing today. I wanted it to be a podcast, but I like the interaction with my audience on the show because I had done a show before. Zane told me about doing this live Google Hangout thing that saves to YouTube. So now I still haven't even done the podcast part that I wanted, and I have like 15 episodes of a show on YouTube that have all gotten hundreds and hundreds of views and many, many more people coming into the Cult of Copy and growing my audience. I layered it. I'm going to take this content, I'm going to strip the audio out, I'm going to turn it into a podcast, I'm going to get more viewers that way. If I wanted to, I could hire someone really cheap off of Fiverr to take those episodes, transcribe them, and then I could hire an editor to take those transcriptions, put them together, turn them into books, then I could hire someone else to put them on Kindle. See, these are like, the content's there, it's already there, I already did it. Same thing with those live training sessions. If I want, like I said, phase 2, if I wanted to, I could polish them up and put them for sale as real polished products the way other people have out there. But I didn't wait until I had done it that way in order to put it out there in the public and get feedback and get paid to do it. That can all be phase 2. If I wasn't lazy, I would already have done it. But that should just give you an idea of how you can layer and compound these efforts and get more and more information out of what you're doing. So, like, in fact, a lot of the topics that I've already covered on the previous episodes of the Cult of Copy show, are content that stems from things that I wrote either for the cult or before the cult existed. Some of them are topics that I did as shows for my old show before the Cult of Copy even existed that almost no one watched. So like it's new to everyone but like the 15 people who watched that episode 2 years ago. But it's the same content, it's still relevant, and you get more and more use out of the things that you've already produced. So yeah, like if I don't have an idea for a new episode of the show, I'll start flipping back through my old notes and my old mind maps, old show episodes, and find things to talk about again in a new way. Because I did it so loose off of the notes the first time, in all likelihood, even though I'm talking about the same topic, it'll be completely different because it'll be, years later. I'll have more insight. I have more input. I'll think of a new twist. Maybe some current event happened that I can tie in a new way that makes the conversation fresh. I think that's it. We talked about the shortcuts and the procrastinating and compounding. Talked about all kinds of things. I could go back over it all, but I'm going to say I'm going to be lazy because we're right on the end of 3 o'clock here. Hopefully you got a lot out of this episode. I'm going to go through my little spiel and tell you who I am and who the cult is and what the deal is with the show, but then after that I'm going to flip over to the YouTube page and look for any comments you may have had. So if you have any questions or comments, post them under the YouTube video that you should be watching right now, and I'm going to jump over there and look in a minute. They do take a little while to show up on my end, so me going through this little spiel now will give you a moment to do that, so I would appreciate it. Please do that. I see you viewers there. I see you. If you're listening to me right now, go leave a comment because I'm going to talk to you about it. As usual, I have been your host, the Reverend Dr. Sir Colin D. Theriault, leader of the Cult of Copy, whose show this is. The Cult of Copy is a discussion group for copywriting, persuasion, influence, marketing, all of those sneaky mind control tricks that make people do things that they didn't necessarily want to do, but you wanted them to do, and then they think it's their own idea and everybody's happy and everyone wins. If that's your kind of thing, please join us at cultofcopy.com. You can join our discussion group from there. If you like this show, we record new episodes live Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, right here via our YouTube channel, youtube.com/cultofcopy. If you like the show, subscribe, look at our old episodes, leave comments. Zane wanted me to remind you that anytime you see anything in any episode that you like, leave a comment with the timestamp of the part that you like, and he will come back around and pull a clip out and make a handy little clip of just that little snippet of video just for you and post it to the channel. So if you like that kind of thing, do that. That's it. I told you who I am. I told you who the cult is. Told you about the show. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's hop over to the YouTube channel and see if anybody's got any comments for us. Oh, that's weird. I hate when it makes it so I can hear my own self. All right, looking at the comments. Craig Brower says, regarding ballooning an idea inside your own head, George R.R. Martin, who, if you don't know, is the author of Game of Thrones, which is a very good HBO series. I haven't read the books. I'm told they're good. My wife likes them. In fact, funny story, I once broke an elevator in a hotel in New Orleans with George R.R. Martin and his lady friend. We all got into a tiny elevator, and we overloaded it, and it was one of those things where the doors opened and it was only halfway in between floors. That was ages ago. He was there. It was like a science fiction convention in like 94, and he was there talking about like the Beauty and the Beast TV show, which he also did. So that's pretty old school. He's like a lot more famous now. Anyways, the quote from him is, he's talking about the book series. I make no promises. I found out long ago that when you look at the overall task, the cathedral you have to build, it looks so daunting that you just give up and sit down and play a video game. I feel you, George. I feel you. But yeah, if you give yourself too much time to think about a project that you do care about and you like, you'll make it bigger than it necessarily needs to be in order for you to proceed. So if you rein yourself in and try and keep yourself on the minimal functional task, like for example, if you're writing a novel, instead of thinking about like the huge story arc that you need to cover in this book, just write a chapter, see where it goes, see where the characters go, wind them up, let them go on their own way, focus on what's right in front of you, get it done, and then sometimes you don't even need to worry about the big picture thing because it takes care of itself piece by piece. You know what I mean? You stack up one brick at a time, you'll end up with something, you know, a wall, a building, a cathedral, maybe. Bezier, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Bezier Grin says he's on the new 4-day work week. 4-day work weeks are good. I'm a big fan of those. I also, if you can make those days half days, even better. Mike Halperin says, a math teacher failed me but gave me all summer to do every problem in the math book for redemption, provided 70% of them are correct. He waited until the last week and just filled in fake answers, and it worked. Excellent, excellent. I fully think that is amazing. That is a great way to do it. I once had a friend in high school. We had to take the graduation test, like the state exit exam, basically. I think it was called LEAP at the time, Louisiana Education something something. And it's a multiple choice test where you bubble in your answers. And the bubbles were like A through G. It was a lot of choices for each question. And instead of taking the test with any seriousness whatsoever, he bubbled in fag over and over, F-A-G, 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 and he made a passing grade. So he got to graduate by just writing fag over and over on his test. I'm not going to say his name because maybe they'll come and take away his diploma some 20-odd years later. But yeah, I always thought that was pretty funny. You never know, man. You never know. Bezier says again, I enjoy the way you put this, really about ingenuity, but clearly about the effort to reduce effort and workload, aka laziness. Thanks. Well, thank you, Bezier. I hope you will join the group if you're not already a member. Stick around, participate. It's the kind of thing we talk about quite frequently. And that appears to be all the comments. So we're at 3 o'clock. It is the end of the day. I'm going to leave you to your afternoon and to the weekend. For you show watchers, I will see you again next week, same bat time, same bat channel, which is to say youtube.com/cultofcopy. We will see you here again Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern for another live episode. But you don't have to wait for me. There's 15 more episodes in the channel. If you haven't watched them, you should. If you like this one, and if you really, really like it, you should subscribe and share it and tell your friends and tell them to tell their friends and bring everybody along. We'll have a good old time together. Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening, afternoon, and Friday, and Saturday, and Sunday, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Adios, everybody. Take it easy.